I'm here with David Kemp, who's had a very interesting and diverse career. He's now retired. Could you explain very simply what your last job involved? Or is that
Indeed,
abrupt?
and thank you for the opportunity. And I'd like to talk about eventually my last job, which was in the area of what's called digital transformation. The point being that almost every single industry, every single organization you can think of, from charities to the Ministry of Defense, to banking, to healthcare, whatever, involves knowledge management and data management. And that's really what I'm has been specializing in particular, three areas: knowledge management. So for example, helping the British Library in terms of their search and curating. Intellectual property capture, meaning what is that seriously interesting information that you have as a company that's very important and you need to safeguard. And I was working with Royal Bank of Scotland, where that was very critical. Data exploitation, meaning can I get the best results out of the information that I have? So consequently, one of our clients is the UK police, but also data security and protection. It's interesting, isn't it, that we have something like Facebook, we have Twitter, and obviously all the other opportunities of social media. On the one hand, we want to be able to have freedom to interact with others. On the other hand, we also don't want certain parts of our information not to be shared. So the question is, how can you have both of these? And in order to get to this position, my job is a business strategist. That is to say, planning where the demand was in relation to the software products that my company had. And given that background, I just briefly show you that I have had time as an army officer. I've been a solicitor of the British courts. I've been an insurance broker for political risk. I've been a banker. I've been in compliance, which means the enforcing of regulations within the bank, but also hopefully of interest and of value. I've also been the chairman of the Workers' Council for a bank for 9 years, and also chairman of a charity committee, meaning can we give something back to the community? So I pull those all together. So what does my job involve? It's basically deducing business needs from clients, where I can then find what is the challenge that you have in relation to data management, seeing the existing facilities that they have, and creating innovative solutions to advance their goals and their business needs. And if you like, that all involves the ability to persuade and convince a client as to the solutions that are required. But the importance of this, I would say centrally, is that this applies to absolutely every industry you can think of, including NGOs, including charities, etc. So I hope that gives you a general idea.
Right. So you wouldn't really have a typical day at work because you've had such a wide variety of things to do. What would your typical day look like?
I would say the starting point really is I have a potential client, let's say, so an initial priority research on the client. Research really very important. Where is the client now and where do they want to be? Looking online, you can look at their annual report, which is very valuable usually because they have to project 5 years forward as to where they want to be. And then ask yourself, of those objectives for the future, how many of those actually have a data component? And I think you'll be amazed at how frequently almost every single one of them depends on being able to manage information. So first of all, research. Secondly, then checking as to what the client's needs are and what they're understood. What have they said that they want? Then I've had to bring together a team of colleagues. I didn't own a huge department, but my job was really to bring together key specialists, those who knew about the technology, those who knew about the regulation, those who knew about implementation, and put it all together. So teamwork. Then creating a meeting with the client, either real or virtual, deducing from that, where is it we now need to tailor the software that we have to match what they need, to keep senior management informed, and then to work out What is the next presentation or pitch that we need to make in order to go for a sale? And I would say that's a pretty standard day's work.
Wow. So you must use lots of different things in your job. I mean, what couldn't you live without? What kind of things do you need to do all of that?
I think the first of these, I would say, is a strategic model, something that universally can apply to clients, and it doesn't matter whether, as I say, whether they're Ministry of Defence, a bank, a charity, health service, or whatever. And one of the things that we've found over the last 3 or 4 years is that there are some universal drivers of any kind of business. First of all, regulation and compliance, keeping on the side of the angels, risk management. Everybody has a risk element to what they do. How can you manage that and control it? Secondly, operational efficiency. How can you do things better, faster, cheaper, and actually produce better results for your organization? And then the third, I would call in the commercial world revenue. But even in those areas which don't have an earning budget, such as the NHS or the MOD, I still say there's still budget. You still have to justify the spend that you have. And what I've found is that this kind of model is something that enables me to talk to anyone. And the two, if you like, the square and the circle, what are they about? Well, the square is about information management. Can we find the information that we need to achieve these 3 goals? Can we classify it into a sensible curation? And then can we govern it? Can we make it work for us? And what's the circle all about? Well, you can't escape from the fact that all data, it needs to be found. Secondly, who's entitled to have it? Very important, coming back to things like your own personal Twitter account and your WhatsApp account. And then finally, the applications that are necessary and the security that lies around it. So we're talking information management, we're talking about security. So that's one thing. The second thing is having, if you like, a go pack, having a presentation for immediate usage. And indeed, one of the things that I generated was what I call the tube map, which is talking about business information. And people like the idea. They can link to what a tube map looks like, but it's dealing with the strands of information management that exist anywhere. A lot of it is to do with privacy of data. It's also to do with structured data, meaning what you would find in a spreadsheet. So it's your numbers, it's your invoices. But of course, what's prevalent these days is the unstructured data. It is your mobile phone traffic. It is your Twitter feeds. It is your email traffic. And in order to run your business, whether it's the NHS, whether it's Shell, whether it's BP or whatever, you need to be able to have a handle on it, and you need to be able to exploit it, capture the critical information you need, and also lock it down. And I suppose the third thing will be a set of case studies, so that in relation to the particular client, I've got something that I can say, we've done this for you before. We've done this for your industry. Look at this and gain confidence from it. So I'd say those are the 3 things that are important.
Yeah, so you've touched on this before. You must get enormous satisfaction from helping people. Can you talk a bit about your things that you like about your job, that you enjoy?
First of all, the variety of industries and entities who have a need here. And you can read the papers almost every single day, and you will find different industries who've got a problem, and a problem in relation to data management. So I think the variety is really interesting and stimulating. The second thing is it's more a kind of soft skill or engagement, and that is forming virtual teams. The ability to get on with people, the ability to persuade people that what you are doing is something they might like to join in on, and they would benefit and value from it. And as a result, we could both satisfy a client, possibly make money as a result. And I suppose the third thing is, if I had time going through my various professions that I've worked for, what I've always done about every 3 years is I have created a greenfield site solution. That means to say, somebody's come to me and said, David, we've got a new issue, like, for example, going way back now 20 years, the creation of the euro currency. We've never seen this before. Can you set up an analysis of what is needed? Can you create a team? Can you create a policy? Can you create a budget? And after 3 years, I'm very happy then to pass it on. So it's the creativity and innovativeness, which I think is important. But
So
also,
by greenfield, you mean something that didn't exist before and you've had to completely invent it? Yeah.
Precisely. And indeed, only last weekend, the National Centre for Universities and Business talked about the need for graduate job placements and the need for people to be adaptive and resilient. And of course, that's the whole point about not only COVID, but also Brexit, is that the world is changing beyond our control. The question is, how can you as an individual student, becoming a graduate, becoming an employee, how can you, or being self-employed, how can you make the most of what's happening in the marketplace? And if you like, work on the fact that change is constant. There's no longer a job for life for virtually anyone, possibly with the exception of a doctor, I suspect. But the idea to be adaptive and resilient, I think, is something really very important.
Is there anything about your job you're not so keen on? Anything you change?
Yeah. Yes, indeed. I think, and I'm not, of course, alone here. I think the first thing is bureaucracy. The bureaucracy that slows things down, the bureaucracy that is there just because it's a set of rules written some time ago, but not necessarily relevant to live with. You have to live with it, but you have to make sure that it doesn't slow you down. So coping with that. Second thing, I suppose, is internal politics, which means this can disrupt how you work because of somebody else's agenda. And the question is, how can you win them over and get them on side? And also, those who don't want to cooperate. So give them a vested interest. What's in it for them to be able to work with you, for you to join them, to tit for tat, to share products, to support them? My general proposition, if anyone ever asks me for help, if ever I possibly can, I will do so, and I'll give them priority. And I think that those are three things that one has to work through. They're true of any organization, and developing not a thick skin, but at least a sensitivity as to where these have come from, and basically having enough ingenuity to work through them.
It seems like working in a team and being able to work with different types of people is absolutely crucial to your field.
It is. On the other hand, I'm also highly respectful of those who are individuals, who really quite happy being excellent at what they do, because we all depend on them. For example, when I was in the army, I remember I had a driver of my armored car. He did very well. I wanted to promote him, but he said, no, I'm just happy being the best driver in your squadron. I don't actually want to be promoted. And thank goodness not everybody wanted to be a general, because then that would be chaos.
Yeah. So have you ever, it's a very awkward question, but have you ever made any mistakes, and did you learn anything from that?
Yes, I think if there's one thing I am personally self-critical about is, if you like, not perceiving how you are perceived by a colleague. And I had an instance where I was working with a regular army captain. He found it difficult to articulate what he wanted, and I and my brother officers didn't make life easy for him. But the other thing I found out was he was a boxer. And I thought of the analogy here. How do you deal with a strong boxing opponent? There are two things you can do. One is you can stand out of the way of his swing, and the other one is to get in so close and tight that he can't swing at you. And that's something I criticize myself for not being sympathetic to his articulation. But in order to resolve it, I got in really tight with him, and we became the very best of friends as a result. So I think, if you like, the ability to see yourself, how you understood by other people, and listening to other people and what they think of you is really very important.
So would you say that was something you're very proud of? What would have been the very proud moments of your career?
I think especially 2 or 3 of these greenfield site projects, setting up a trade finance department at a Dutch bank in London, preparing the United Kingdom, my company, for the euro coming in, and also when I was at a major British bank, it needed, wait for it, £275 billion from the government in order not to fall over.
Yeah.
And I was part of the legal team that negotiated with the government. But it was really quite interesting. We were within 2 weeks of the end of the year, and the bank urgently needed this 275 billion guarantee from the government to carry on operating. What was interesting in their meeting was it was a 5-hour meeting that lasted 2.5 hours. Why? Because within the first 40 minutes, we worked out that the other side, the government, could not allow this bank to fail. And
Yeah.
in which case, we were both on the same side of the table.
Mm-hmm.
And when we unrolled a literally 5-meter map of what we had done to reorganize the bank, we said, any questions? They said no, and the meeting was over. So I'm really proud of that.
So that kind of preempting my next question, which is to talk about the skills that you need. You've talked a lot about teamwork and understanding different people and their strengths and what they are good at. And you've also talked a lot about being very well prepared and planning. Would you say those are the important skills? Is there anything else?
Absolutely. And if you like, taking those points, which I entirely agree with, winning the client confidence. You've never met them before. You might be only seeing them on Zoom. They might be overseas. They might be of a different nationality. So how can you win their confidence? And that is a matter of really putting yourself in their shoes, doing research to understand what their problems are. Because if you watch the press and do enough research, even good old Wikipedia is good at this. It enables you to empathize with where they are and work out not what it is they say they want, but what do they really need? And those can be 2 different things. I think the second thing is ingenuity. The ability to strip down the client's problem, and a bit like this tube map, to be able to say, as I regularly do with this particular graphic, you tell me which of these you're dealing with. And what's that doing? On the one hand, it's showing that I'm creating order out of chaos. Secondly, I'm getting the client themselves to highlight the things that they feel they're falling short on. And then I think a third aspect really you've touched on as well, and that is the ability to present, to be persuasive. I'd be absolutely honest, I would say that sitting with a boardroom of 10 clients around a table is actually more frightening than talking to 300 people. In 300, they're just a mass of faces. In that boardroom, they could stop you at any time and ask you a fastball question. But the ability to present, to persuade, to talk in an articulate manner, and to listen, I think is really very important as much as talking.
Thank you. So I know you're retired now. What's next for you? How are you spending
I think
your time?
for me, it would be a great pleasure if by talking about my experiences, the things I got right, the things I got wrong, might actually help in this very destabilized time because of Brexit and COVID. If I could help the younger generations at whatever level, secondary level, sixth form college, university, graduates, if I can pass on some of this experience and help them with their own careers and help them realize what are the skills, as we've just been discussing, that you need in order to make this work for you. Then if I can provide models from my past, which are worth discussing to get discussion going, and then inspiring students actually to look into if you like, the world of employment, not with a sense of doom because surely there's no job for me. No, there isn't a special job for you. You've got to go out and look for it. But if between ourselves, myself and obviously the school, if we can provide the student with those tools to feel adventurous, to be able to cope with the things that are beyond your control, but have the courage to deal with the opportunities as they arise as well.
Fantastic. So yes, if you were one of our students at King's Academy Ringmore or any other school and listening to you now, what would you say they should do if they want to have as interesting and as important a career as you have?
Well, I would say don't take what I say for granted, but take, for example, my triangle, or more complicated in a way, this supply chain, and just go and apply it. You don't need to talk to anybody. You can just get information off the web, or you can talk to other people. You can look in the papers and just test it out. Cross-refer. Is my experience something that is general out in the marketplace and inevitable? My suggestion, and I would never obviously talk about any products, because I haven't spoken about anything how we solve these problems. But I think being able to show that one has a strategic understanding of how businesses operate, as I say, it doesn't matter whether it's a charity or whether it's a large corporation, whether it's an accounting practice, whether it's a law firm or whatever, it doesn't matter. If you have a clarity of thought, then if you can achieve that, so much the better. And also, when talking to yourself, Natalie, as well as other careers advisors later on in further education, can we identify what is going to be something, and here's a key word I haven't used before, something you enjoy. I think it's so important. If you can find out what you enjoy, then that makes life so much easier. May sound strange. Am I going to enjoy English? Am I going to enjoy maths? Well, you could do, but it's a matter of research into where these are taking you to. All I would say is that, especially for those going into GCSE, stay with it. Get those basics, especially English, history, maths, and languages. Languages in particular. These are the things which you learn now. They're easier to learn than later on, and they will give you an edge later on as well.
Brilliant. So keep your options open and do your research and see what's out there.
Exactly, and be ready to dream. Be ready to say, where could I, or where would I like to be, for starters, and then what are the building blocks in order to get there? And that's, in a way, once again, comes back to the triangle and the tube map. They, in a way, contribute to putting that together. But I think there are some key attributes that I think are essential. Likability. Are you a nice person? Do people like being with you? Do you enjoy their company? Do you basically listen twice as hard as you speak? Secondly, are you inquisitive? Are you prepared to do the research? Do you care? Where do you want to be? Presentability, not only just simply how you look and whatever, but how you speak and how you come across. I think core competencies from GCSEs are essential, but also having a questioning and debating capability so that you can argue, because none of us get anywhere without having some kind of argument. It doesn't have to be acrimonious, but it does mean to say, are you really just simply taking on board what somebody else says, or are you projecting your own personality? I think that's some advice I would give.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to talk to us.